So, got to talk about nutrient timing today. As a whole, nutrient timing is probably a small piece of the puzzle when it comes to overall health. It'll be around about the 10% range, but if you have everything else nailed, especially food, and maybe want to try and then eke out a bit more from your exercising, you should then maybe consider this. Before we get into this though, if you're one of these two people below, then you can maybe just skip forward. You can go watch another one of my videos. If you're early on in your journey with fitness and weight loss and all that jazz, I don't think this is important at the moment for you. Continue learning the basics, especially around calories and energy balance and actual exercising. And then once those things become effortless habits, they almost become automatic, then you can consider things like this. Because nutrient timing is that small a piece of the puzzle compared to calories and energy balance and things like that. It's funny as well because people want to know about nutrient timing before they've even addressed their diet. It's fucking bonkers. So worrying about this when you're still in the early stages is a massive waste of time. It's like waiting on Scotland getting past the group stages in the Euros. Also, if you just want to lose weight, regardless of performance, you can probably skip over this. But on the flip side, if you do care about performance, then obviously keep watching. I've mentioned before, if you're trying to lose weight, the two things to consider when you're doing it is, do you want to lose weight but maintain performance, or do you just want to lose fat and nothing else? And obviously I recommend it's performance driven, because the chance of you looking better naked increases if you're exercising, i.e. performance driven. I make the assumption that most people trying to lose weight want to look better naked. But if you're just here for the banter, stick around if you want to sound smart in front of your mates. You know, when you're in the pub and you say, I'll tell you another thing about nutrient timing, all the women start falling at your knees. Nutrient timing is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you strategically take in specific nutrients at specific times. This question isn't that important in the grand scheme of things of changing how your body looks, but you may just want a bit more out of your training or want to get a bit more energy at certain times of the day, etc. Arguably as well, the better you perform, the better you're going to then look naked. So a big one is protein. We'll probably do a separate video on performance and protein and things, but to go over it quickly, if you're either trying to lose weight or gain weight, it's recommended you spread out your protein servings somewhat evenly throughout the day. The main reason for this is to spike muscle protein synthesis, which basically is a process required to build muscle. You ideally want to do this regularly throughout the day to try and give you the best possible chance of growing muscle. I've been trying to do this for years without much effort, as you can see. To increase the chance of this happening, you want quality protein, things like chicken, beef, whey powders, natural yogurt, all these sort of things. And here's a more extensive list. It's not the biggest deal if you don't do this. Total overall protein is just as important, but you want the best quality of protein to give you the best possible chance of growing. If you want to grow as much muscle as possible, as quickly as possible, then you want to do everything you can to give yourself the best possible chance of doing it. Also, some people hate the gym, so they might be keen on this. As much as people say they may hate the gym, I'd argue that all sports benefits from some gym work, so it's something you may have to suck it up, unfortunately, if you want to get better at one of your hobbies. There are freaks and natures out there who don't go to the gym, but are incredible athletes. I'm sure they do some sort of mobility work and things like that are just as important. I've mentioned before as well, what protein also does is keep you feeling full and satisfied. So that's another important reason to spread out evenly throughout your day, especially when you're trying to lower your weight, as you're likely to be on lower calories. So moving on, you may hear people talk about pre, intra and post-workout. I think they call it PERI Training, combining the three of them. We'll go through the three then. So pre-workout, this is the energy you take in before training. I'll try and keep it as generic as possible. We'll go into specific doses later on in another video to try and stretch out the content. So you basically take in pre-workout nutrition around 30 minutes before your workout, or up to 90 minutes within that window. I would say the more processed your choice of food is, the longer it is then likely going to take to digest. So I'd be leaving things like pastries and cakes and things like that as far back as possible. It was quite popular a few years ago. People would go to a coffee shop and they would have a pastry before they go to the gym and shit like that. Or people I used to follow anyway. 90 minutes would allow something of dense calories to then be broken down and used as energy. If you're having a proper meal like lunch or breakfast, I'd maybe give that 2 hours before, just because of the amount of food that you're eating. More easily digestible foods could be closer to the workout, so around about the 30 minutes. Ultimately, it's going to be you that decides this. And once you do that, you'll then have to figure out if any of this is causing you bloating or creating uncomfortable workouts. So around about this time as well, you would consider taking in caffeine or pre-workout powders as well. You want these powders in your system working by the time you get to the gym or start exercising. You drinking caffeine as you enter the gym is so fucking pointless. It won't kick in until like another 20-30 minutes later. So it's almost like a delayed reaction. Be mindful of the time you're taking caffeine as well, because it then may affect your sleep if you go to the gym in the afternoon or late in the evening. Protein before the gym may also be ideal, depending on when your last serving was and your next serving. It's recommended in the pre-workout as well, like you take some sort of serving of carbohydrates. We're going to get in later on about you choosing what specific nutrients to take, so bear with me. Your intra-workout carbohydrates are quite popular here, especially in powder form in your drinks. Cyclic dextrin is really easy to digest, so that's quite popular to have during exercising. Also electrolytes, if you sweat a lot as well, help rehydrate you and keep you hydrated. If you're training for a number of hours, the things I've just mentioned will be even more important. But if you're training for about an hour, it's debatable whether you actually need it. I have cyclic dextrin and electrolytes during my workout, and my workout's about an hour long. I have other stuff as well, but again, that's for another video. There's also other supplements that we can talk about later on. Post-nutrition, many people also prioritise carbohydrates here after the gym to kickstart recovery, but obviously that's up to yourself, because if you've got a calorie target, all these things I've just mentioned has to then factor into that as well. So you might want to save the carbs for later, for example. If your next training session is around 24 hours, just consuming normal amounts of carbs should be enough rather than having a massive amount after your workout. But again, that's up to yourself. Just consuming normal amounts of carbohydrates throughout the rest of your day should be enough rather than having a massive amount after a workout. Having a massive amount of carbohydrates after the gym is quite popular with bodybuilders, but again, it's up to yourself. Ideally, these carbohydrates are easily digestible also. Protein as well may be a good idea if your last serving was 3 to 5 hours before you started the gym. I want to touch on eating just throughout your normal day and how timing then might affect that. So if you, for example, eat a lot of food at lunches but feel shit afterwards, then it may affect your day feeling sluggish, and that's quite popular in an office environment. So maybe the timing of certain foods or the amount that you eat in needs to be addressed. For example, a low carb lunch may suit you to avoid the feeling of being in a slump. I've said before, nutrient timing isn't that important, but then that feeling means that you want to sack off the gym later on because you can't be arsed. Then it becomes a bit more important. Another example, you eat too late at night and then it affects your sleep, so then you don't get up to train. Again, it's then worth addressing. You addressing and changing when you eat may affect how you feel at certain times of the day, which then affects your following days and then into your following weeks. So it's important in that regard. A caveat that I wanted to finish on is, despite having a list of recommendations of when and what to eat, it still comes down to your personal preference and how you feel eating whatever. And again, all of these things then need to be factored into your calories. You may not want to use some of your calories for post-workout nutrition or pre-workout nutrition. Again, it comes down to yourself. You'd have the most comprehensive book full of all these studies and meta-analyses and things that say eat this amount of carbs before the gym and get the perfect workout, but it still might not suit you as you're completely individual. You might not feel comfortable with them in your stomach before training. You may prefer some fats. Even though fats aren't the best source when it comes to lifting weights, they still might suit you and you still might prefer training with them. You may also prefer to train on an empty stomach, which is absolutely fine as well. The reason carbs are recommended is to give you more energy during these short bursts of exercises. I talked about exercising in the gym all the time, but this point is also the same for running, badminton, tennis, fucking football, absolutely anything. Find the best energy source you prefer and perform with the best. First few weeks have got to be trial and error. You may have a few stitches and a sore stomach's working out, but when you've hit your sweet spot and things improve, you'll probably not regret it. It's also important to make this point here as well, because your taste change and you get bored with foods and things like that. It's definitely worth addressing. You should definitely seek comfort that you can change your food sources as and when you feel like it. Ultimately, there's a suboptimal and optimal choice of food or energy. You decide what you prefer. Nutrient timing isn't overly important for the average person just trying to get a bit fitter. It's more geared towards people who are performance-based. The average person can obviously do that too with their hobby, but you don't have to rely on it or think it's going to change your body too much. But if you're a person who wants to get better at a hobby and beat all your pals at it, maybe give it a serious consideration. Unless it's snooker or pool or that. You don't need nutrient timing for snooker or pool. Ultimately, pay attention to the ingredients / choices of food you use and how you react to them. Some quick tips for you. So, individualisation. Listen to your body during the workouts and figure out what suits you best. Timing. Play around with timing. Figure out what suits you. You could be told you need to eat 45 minutes before the gym, but it doesn't suit you because you're fucking driving. You know what I mean? You could be busy at that time. Make it fit around you, obviously. If you're just beginning this, I would stick to single ingredient foods to begin with. Most of the time, they're going to cause you the least amount of distress in your stomach. So maybe factor these in firstly and mostly, and then you can maybe start looking at pastries and cakes and all that sort of shit, if that's what you want. Nutrient timing as a whole isn't overly important, but it may help you with improving speed, lifts, sets, energy, endurance, all that sort of shit. So could help you get that extra few percent that you wanted to. And lastly, try not to be influenced by others. There's people out there pushing like powders and all that sort of shit, and eat cream of rice before you go to the gym and like all that sort of stuff. Try not to be influenced by them. I'm trying to hammer the point that it's completely up to yourself what you want to choose depending on how you react to it. That is us done, so I will see you in the next video.